the recording. I'm so glad to see you all here and to welcome you to our special session of alignment tonight with Becca Desai. Becca is a new leader of alignment tonight, so a warm welcome. Becca is the co-chair of the Interfaith Activities Committee of the Federation of Zoroastrian Associations in North America. And it was my absolute delight to meet Becca in a very, very, very long registration line at the Parliament this summer, which gave us an incredible opportunity to share and to discover many connections. And then we kept running into each other and running into each other and running into each other at the Parliament, which we took as a sign that we need to stay connected. Many of us do not know enough about this most ancient of faith traditions, even that it's a tradition that is still widely practiced today. But I am quite sure that we will most definitely know and recognize the influence of Zoroastrian theology in Christianity, in Judaism, in Islam, in Buddhism. We see it in Greek philosophy. And so it is an absolute delight to pass over to Becca to lead us in our time of contemplation tonight. Thank you so much, Becca.
Thank you, Margaret, and your organization, Alignment, Interfaith Contemplative Practices, for inviting me here today and giving our religion, Zoroastrianism, to also be able to present a glimpse into our sacred contemplative practices. I will share with you today how we Zoroastrians use our short meditative prayers, or what we call our meditative formulas, to practice contemplative meditation. The prayer I will be using today is called Ashem Vohu, which was composed by our prophet Zarathustra almost 4,000 years ago in a language he spoke in called Avesta. Avesta is spelled as A-V-E-S-T-A, Avesta. The words of these prayers or meditative formulas are considered to be sacred mantras. Mantras are pearls of wisdom, which are filled with profound messages for humankind. Many Zoroastrians use these formulas during contemplative meditation to seek answers to end their suffering and build their inner peace and happiness. I'm going to be showing you a slide of this prayer, so bear with me for a second. Can you all see my slide?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So the meditative formula I'm going to focus on today, Ashem Vohu, is a short, powerful prayer in which the thrust is on Asha and Ushta, which in the Avestan language means righteousness and radiant happiness. In this short mantra of just 12 words, one praises righteousness and affirms that one will be righteous for the sake of righteousness. If we meditatively contemplate on the core message of this prayer, we can unlock the secret to true radiant happiness in life. The prayer goes like this: Ashem Vohu, Vahishtem Asti, Ushta Asti, Ushta Ahmai Hyat Ashai, Vahishtai Ashem. It means righteousness is good. It is the best. It is radiant happiness. We receive radiant happiness when we learn to live righteously, because living righteously is the best and the only way of living our lives. Many Zoroastrians use this prayer in contemplative meditation to find answers on how we can receive radiant happiness in the daily grind of life, which is abundant with things that can make us happy. I'm going to stop sharing the slide now. One of the oldest forms of contemplative meditation is meditating on a spiritual text. The spiritual texts or prayers that we recite daily, several times a day, offers a Zoroastrian the opportunity every day to contemplate meditatively on the profound messages in these prayers to keep our day going well, peacefully, and happily. So now we are going to see how, by contemplating on the Ashem Vohu prayer, we can help reduce or end our suffering. I'll go a little bit deeper into what I just said. I'll give you an example of unhappiness, which is very common to most people, which is not receiving the same kind of attention, care, and help you give to others all the time, especially when you feel like you need it the most. When this happens to you, you may very likely feel sad, unhappy, depressed, frustrated, and such similar feelings. You may think that it is only natural for you to expect attention, care, and help from the other person on whom you have been showering all your love and attention. But when that doesn't happen, it stresses you out and it fills you with many negative emotions that are harmful for you physically, mentally, as well as emotionally. So let us use this message in the Ashem Vohu prayer to ease that suffering. You know that the message of this prayer, that radiant happiness comes to us when we live righteously for the sake of righteousness, because it is the best way to live our lives. The important words here to contemplate on are for the sake of righteousness, much more than the words to live with righteousness. What does for the sake of righteousness truly mean? When we are doing all the right things in the roles we play in life, we give ourselves wholeheartedly to others. We give our love to others. We care deeply for them. We do all that we can to help our loved ones and others in our life. And doing all this makes us feel very happy. It gives us inner peace and happiness, and it makes our conscience feel great. We feel that we are being righteous and that we approve of our actions and behavior. And then suddenly something happens to turn that beautiful, happy feeling into a sad, unhappy feeling. It could be that one of those people you have been giving all your love and attention to so selflessly does something hurtful to you. This kind of occurrence happens often to people when we get hurt by someone's words or actions, and we feel that we didn't deserve such hurtful behavior. At such a time, contemplative meditation on the Ashem Vahu prayer will help us tremendously. Contemplating on this prayer, we will realize that while we were doing the right thing, while we were righteous, we were not being righteous for the sake of righteousness, because we were expecting our loved one to give us back that same good behavior, that same kind of love and attention that we were giving them. We did not expect this person to ever hurt us. Now, by contemplating on this sacred prayer, we realize that this expectation on our part is wrong. This expectation of receiving good behavior and love and kindness back in return is not a part of our righteousness. In fact, it turned our righteous deeds into unrighteous deeds. The minute we expect something in return for something good that we do for others, it nullifies our action of righteousness. And because our act was not truly righteous, as we allowed expectations to creep in, we will not continue to receive that radiant happiness anymore. If we succeed in practicing contemplative meditation on this prayer and honestly acknowledge that the cause of our unhappiness is not the other person's actions, but a lacking in our own righteous actions, we now become enlightened about an important truth about life. We have learned that the happiness of our conscience, our emotions, and our physical and mental well-being largely depends on our own actions. The more we practice contemplative meditation with sacred messages like these, the stronger we'll be able to build our inner strength, our inner peace and happiness. And this true happiness will radiate to others around us. We will have spiritually elevated to a level of understanding the true meaning of happiness. We have now learned to love like God, who loves all his creations selflessly, never expecting anything back in return. These contemplative meditation techniques are immensely rewarding, and they help us gain an insight into ourselves, into our mind, into the divine, and into life in general. I hope I was able to explain how we Zoroastrians use contemplative meditation on messages from our sacred texts and put the knowledge we gain from it into practice into our daily lives. Thank you very much, and I'm open to any questions you have for me at this time.
Thank you, Becca. So as you put in the chat any thoughts that you have or any questions you have, also feel free to unmute and engage in this conversation a little bit more. But Becca, I would ask, what does that contemplative life look like in your tradition? You mentioned coming into the saying of prayers several times a day. Would you comment on what that looks like, the prayer life in your tradition?
Yes. So when a child is about, a girl is about 7 to 9 years old, or a boy is around 9 to 11 years old, we take that child into our religion through a ceremony we call the Navjot ceremony, which is like giving a new spiritual life to that child. And from that day onwards, that child is responsible for his or her own actions and is accountable for whatever choices they make. And when we receive that initiation, we receive a sacred garment, which is a white shirt and undershirt that we wear under our outer clothing. And we receive a sacred string. It's like a cord that is that has 72 strands of lamb's wool woven into a string in a sacred way that we tie on our waist over that white undershirt. And that string is basically like tying a belt on our waist, telling ourselves every day that we are ready to serve in any capacity we can to further goodness and progress in our world. And we do that with 3 basic prayers that we say. We're supposed to say them 5 times a day because our day is divided into 5 parts, where in each part we are supposed to contemplate on those prayers. But whenever that person does those prayers, each of those prayers, we say that they are prayers, but actually they're like auto suggestions and messages they're universal messages to mankind. And those messages resound in our thoughts, and they remind us. For example, the first prayer's bottom line is that self-help is the best help. Like if something goes wrong and you are in trouble, you have to make the beginning to help yourself trying to find solutions to that problem. And once we put our minds, our thoughts into finding solutions to that problems, divine help will automatically come our way. The second prayer out of the 3 that we do when we do this tying of the string around our waist reminds us that we stand opposed to everything that thwarts progress in our world, everything that opposes goodness in our world. So all these, the last prayer reminds us of the core principles of our religion that, always in every thought, word, and action, remember to make the best choice, the right choice. Stand on the side of people who are righteous and doing good work in this world. Be self-reliant and help others be self-reliant. And all these core messages from our religion resound in these 3 prayers that we say several times a day. And if we say these prayers with full understanding, even though they are in an ancient language, so if a child recites that in the language in which they are taught, in which we are supposed to pray, does not understand what those prayers mean, then you're just saying them for the sake of saying them. But if you say those prayers with full understanding, then they are amazing in how they have a profound impact on your day, every hour of your day, on every choice that you make throughout your day. They're like a guide, like a silent guide in your heart, in your mind, that guides you to making good choices constantly.
And those words are always on your lips.
Yes, we all have to learn those, memorize those before our ceremony is done in our childhood. And then we never forget them for the rest of our lives.
Would you mind sharing them with us?
Sure. Actually, you know what? We have one of our priests, the head of the priests organization, Temtan Mirza, as one of our guests here. And I would love for him to recite the first verse of Kemna Mazda, which is the first prayer that we begin our tying of the string on our waist with. Temtan, would you mind reciting the first verse of Kemna Mazda prayer for us?
Sure. Kemna Mazda Mavaite Payum Dada Yat Madre Kwao Di Dare Sata Ay Nangeanyem Tuamad Atarasya Manangasya Yo Yao Shotanais Hashem Tarosta Aura. Thank you.
Thank you, Temtan. What he just recited, in short, there were 2 words that I call the golden words when I teach my little kids our religion in our religion classes. The 2 golden words are Manang Ashicha and Athar Ashicha. Manang Ashicha means your beautiful, good thinking mind, and Athar Ashicha is the warmth that you hold in your heart that comes from the spark of divinity that lives within every human being. That if we are constantly aware, whenever life faces any problems to us, if instead of being despaired by it or feeling like I don't know what to do, I'm feeling lost and I give up, I don't know how to go further from here. If you become aware that God has already given us the two best tools, our beautiful, good thinking mind and a warm, loving heart that fills us with love and compassion for everybody, and the brilliant mind he has given us that has an endless capacity to find solutions to any problem that faces us in this world. If we become aware of that, then instead of wasting our thoughts on despair and hopelessness, we begin thinking of, okay, let me find a solution to this problem that has come my way. And we don't allow negative thoughts to enter our mind, but fill it with as many positive, constructive, progressive thoughts that will help us find a solution to the problem that we are facing. So this was just a very small example of just from the first verse of this prayer, that we learn not to feel sad or hopeless when things come your way that you can't face. You are able to face. You have that endless capacity to find an answer to every problem that comes your way.
And the Hashem Vohu prayer, you would sing that through the day, several times through the day?
Yes. And in our religion, it's not like you have to say the prayers only when you're standing in a temple or in a sacred space. I could be driving the car and reciting these prayers in my head. I would be cooking my food in the kitchen, and like anybody could be doing anything, but having those prayers run in their heads, having those thoughts running in their heads. Hashem Vahu is one of the first sermons of our prophet ever, when people were being bullied in the ancient times by those who thought they were very mighty and powerful because they had the most resources and the most weapons. They would declare themselves the lord of the land. That's when he told the people that don't be unhappy in these situations. Use your good mind, do the right thing. And the right thing is to stand up against these bullies. And it takes courage to do the right thing. But once you do the right thing, your heart and your minds, your lives will be filled with happiness.
Beautiful. Do you see this question that is in the chat? In many faith traditions, there is a spectrum of followers and communities, and some see the extremes of those conservative and progressive as problematic to the core message and values. So the two questions are, does Zoroastrianism have a spectrum of communities? And what do you see as the greatest challenge to the Zoroastrian way of life?
Actually, I don't see any problems regarding the core message. Like, the community is not divided as far as the core messages of the sacred texts that we have. Everybody believes in the sanctity of those messages and how universal they are to all humankind, not just to Zoroastrians. These are universal messages. Every religion says that the best path to reach God is through the path of righteousness. So our community is not divided on that at all. There are things that are really not religious, like conversion and things like that. Should we convert people into our religion or not? And those are the kind of things that people have debates about. But even those are slowly getting resolved as the more we learn and read about our prophets, read our prophets' hymns, we learn how progressive our prophet was 4,000 years ago. And how after so many years in this modern day and age, how could we have discussions that don't make much sense? So we are on the whole a very forward-thinking community, and we are not divided because we are such a small community. So really, there's no room for division in such a small community.
And since we see that little symbol of fire there, can you speak to why we associate fire with Zoroastrianism?
So fire, if you look at it literally, it gives you light and it gives you warmth. So the light we associate with our mind, the more we know, the more our mind lights up. It illuminates with knowledge that helps us make better choices. Once you understand something, you're able to deal with that thing in a much better way, deal with people, deal with anything in life. So light is associated with an illuminated mind that thinks well, that is capable of making good choices. And the warmth is associated with the spark of divinity that lives within each one of us, that gives each one of us an endless capacity to love and be compassionate towards all our fellow human beings.
You speak such universal tenets. I'm sure that all of us here recognize something in our own traditions that have begun so many thousands of years ago with Zoroastrianism, and that and we are so very unaware of the influence that Zoroastrianism had on so many of the faith traditions that came after. So can you talk a little bit about how it is that in a time before there was writing, how these prayers from the prophet and what you know from the prophet from 4,000 years ago, how we still know of that today?
Yes. So his followers loved what they heard from their prophets so much, and they believed it to be so sacred. It was a life-changing, those were life-changing hymns for them. And they knew that they would change the lives of all the people in the future. So when people hold something as sacred as that, they don't dare change even the slightest accent or word in the hymns. So all the hymns that our prophets sang were passed on intact from family to family, from parents to children. And like that for hundreds and hundreds of years, it kept being passed on as a sacred duty of the Zoroastrian family to pass on those prayers intact. And it was done so perfectly that when finally it was put in writing during the Sasanian time, somewhere around between 4 and 500, but somewhere in the early part of after Christ was born, between 200 and 500 CE, when it was put in writing and all the scriptures were put in writing, and later on, hundreds of years later, when the scholars of Sanskrit found these writings, and they are the scholars who have actually studied the Rig Veda. Rig Veda is the first of all the Vedas in the Hindu religion, very ancient. It is also around 4,000 years old or even older. They found such similarities between the languages of the Rig Veda and the hymns of Zarathustra. And they were surprised how such an ancient language came down in such an intact form after thousands of years. It had not been changed. Like a lot of other languages change and evolve, and interpretations come in. But this was just in its purest, most intact form. And that's how we know that it must have been considered so sacred by his followers that nobody dared to think of changing anything in them.
Is that the prophet Zarathustra that you are wearing around your neck?
This is just a symbol, like how the Christians wear a cross and the Hindus wear an om. This symbol symbolizes the divinity of God that dwells within each one of us, and we call it the Fravashi. It is like a priest with wings praying. So it's like a human with wings in the position of a prayer, praying with his hands folded.
Can I ask all of you who are here tonight, does that resonate with you, that divinity that lives within you, that light of the divine that is within you. I think this is one of the most powerful and beautiful things that comes from these meetings of alignment, is finding this place where we all can recognize that divinity that is within us, and how very, very ancient that understanding is. Becca, I'm so grateful.
Thank you so much, Margaret. We are grateful for giving Zoroastrianism a platform in your weekly programs and allowing us to give you guys a glimpse into our prayers and how we contemplate on our prayers.
Such an honor for us, and we hope that the connection will continue.
It will. by God.
Would you close us out by reciting for us again the Hashem Vohu, that it will be on our lips and minds as well?
Hashem vohu vahishtem asti, ushta asti, ushta ahmai yet ashai, vahishtai Hashem.
Thank you so much, Becca.
And I bow to the divinity in all of you. Thank you for having me here.
Gratitude. Peace to you all.
Peace to all of you.